Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Ash Field, Senior Business Development Partnerships Manager for ANZ at Shopify Plus, and we are delighted to partner with Shippit, Australia Post, and Hero Packaging to bring you some actionable advice on how to ship and deliver more this peak season. I'll just start with a little bit more about me. I look after strategic industry-specific app and tech partnerships here at Shopify Plus. I also run my own online business, and I am passionate about helping other business owners thrive and survive when it comes to gearing up for peak season. So before we move on, I just want to make a couple of quick reminders. If you can't see or hear during the webinar, please check your computer settings to allow Livestorm to access your mic and camera, or try log out and log back in. Classic tech fix. During the webinar, please feel free to ask any questions to the panel. To do that, all you need to do is use a little question icon at the bottom right of your screen. I will try and take questions as they come through during the webinar, so please ask away. I will also provide a one-pager FAQ after the webinar with the questions that come through throughout the session. So if your question doesn't get answered, don't worry, rest assured it'll be answered in a follow-up email. This is just also a little reminder that we are recording this session today, and we'll send you an email with a link to the recording within the next couple of days. So please do keep an eye out for that so you can tune in and follow in again if you have anything that you want to go back on. Okay, let's get to the exciting part. Joining me today, we have the incredible Harp Dillon, Head of Customer Success at Shippit, and I'm going to pass over to you, Harps, to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. As Ash mentioned, I manage your customer success and account management here at Shippit, Australia's leading shipping and delivery tech platform. We work with a range of merchants from Target to Cotton On to your mom and pop candle store down the road, helping retailers save time, money, and on shipping and delivery. Thanks, Ash.
Thanks, Harps. Okay, next up, we have the sustainable superstar, Anita Sarkar, co-founder and CEO at Hero Packaging. Take it away, Anita.
Hey guys, I am Anita and I am the CEO of Hero Packaging. We've been around for 4 years now, and we do everything sustainable packaging, and we started with home compostable mailers, and now we do a whole bunch of other stuff to help e-commerce businesses. So we are in the thick of it when it comes to preparing for peak season. So I'm actually really excited to talk to you guys today.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have the fantastic Fiona De Silva, General Manager of Product Engineering and Platforms at Australia Post. Fee, over to you.
Thank you. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm quite excited about this webinar today. I am hoping that you've heard about Australia Post. We're a national carrier and obviously servicing many of you and your customers today. Just a bit of a call out of this webinar really resonates with Australia Post because it brings together all of our key strategic objectives. It's about supporting each other. It's about building a sustainable future, and it's about delighting our customers and community. So this is just right in our heartland. Just to give you a little bit of context about what my team does, we build out the digital network that connects you and your customers to the Australia Post physical network. So it's a really exciting time to be here and talking to you about peak and what we can do together. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Fee. Okay, lovely ladies. Now, before we get started, I would like to throw to the audience, and let's start off with a quick poll. So what you need to do is click on the poll icon in the bottom right corner of your screen, and then we'll be able to see the results as they come through in real time. So with that in mind, what was your biggest operational challenge last year? Was it A, carrier reliability, B, dispatching orders, or C, finding enough booze to cope with the stress? I'll give everyone a quick little minute to respond. I'm very interested to see what the results here are. Oh, they're coming in thick and fast. I'll give you another quick 10 seconds. These results are really surprising. Okay. And we're closing that poll in 10 seconds. Alrighty. Well, this shocked me. It looks like everyone has gone for carrier reliability, which is interesting. And you know what? I must admit, I thought it was going to be the booze. So it's good to know that we're all okay on that front.
You know, actually, I predicted that maybe it'd come in carrier reliability.
But look, this is awesome. That's what we're here for the next 45 minutes. We're going to set you up. We're going to ensure that you have all the success to be successful in peak in the coming year. So let's jump into things and kick off with our questions. So this one is for you, Harps. I want to ask, how did retailers manage record-breaking order volumes last year? Did you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure, definitely. It was an unprecedented time. The honest answer here is retailers poured money into the problem. Carrier capacity was at its limits, rates were going up, labor shortages were happening. The goal was to get orders in the hands of your customers any way they could. And I think no one wanted to risk losing the sale at the end of the day. But at the end of it, with more orders to fulfill and more returns, it also meant more sales, conversions, increased customer lifetime value. Shipping carriers became busier than ever, and retailers needed to manage customer expectations.
And Fee, what about from your perspective?
I think because also there was a combination. It wasn't just a standard peak. You talked about that. We were sitting in a pandemic time. So what we actually saw that everyone basically dug really deep. What wasn't lost was the commitment to customer, and that's the end customer, the individual that was really looking to receive this. So we shared with some of the things we did. We were doing pop-ups. I think customers were just doing what they needed to do. And in response, I think people like Australia Post, we were really doing what we needed to do. It was the biggest peak that we'd ever seen year on year, even between the pandemics. It was 20% up. So people were really buying online. There was a lot of pressure. But I think at the end of the day, dig deep and do what you had to. But we knew that it wasn't sustainable. And that's probably why we're here today, to talk about how we can make it a more sustainable and reliable process going forward.
Yeah, of course. And I would absolutely agree with that. I guess when the lines of communication are open as a buyer, you trust the process more. So moving into that next little question that we've got coming up here, from the retailer's perspective, what are the common challenges that you face as a retailer during peak season? I know from our perspective at Shopify, we hear from our merchants things like delayed deliveries, pickup issues with carriers, staff being sick, which I assume was more so during peak COVID in 2021. Anita, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, of course. So we have such big challenges when it comes to peak season, but it starts in March. Even though peak season is an October thing, and we love to talk about shipping, we love to talk about carrier delays and things, actually the issues start from March when you have to prepare all the inventory, making sure the right inventory is there for peak season. And now the new normal is that there are delays in sea shipments. So not only are we worried about those delays, we're worried about extra freight costs. How are we going to have the right inventory at the right time, but not so much that it's wasted after peak season. So that's probably the first thing that we have a challenge with. And then I would say the second thing as a brand is to cut through the noise during peak season. Every single brand is throwing money at advertising and trying to communicate with customers. So even when you're trying to tell customers via email that, hey, your order is delayed, or hey, set expectations that your order may be delayed, they're not even opening the email because they're getting so many branded emails. So it's about how do we get communication with the customer? What can we do better? And then I would say the third thing is obviously all the post-purchase stuff. So, the shipping delays, and carriers are so overwhelmed with the amount of parcels, and we love to blame them. We love to say hey, they didn't do their job. Actually, they are doing their job, but they're just working overtime. And so it's about how do we work with companies like Shippit to figure out, with our account manager, what we can do moving forward. So I would say those three things, but it starts super early.
And being prepared. It's over communicating, isn't it? Yeah. I guess moving on from those challenges and leaning into what is going to move the needle forward. Harps, do you have any ideas around what retailers should continue investing in this year?
Sure, definitely. I think in line with what Fiona and Anita just mentioned, what we saw this year, especially towards the start of the year, where retailers were looking to drive efficiencies in their business. So they looked at replatforming, reviewing their WMS, looking at carrier coverage, planning ahead in prep for peak, basically. Any way they could improve their customer experience and the way they were servicing their customers at the end of the day. I think one also thing to add on to this is better tracking experiences. That's, changes on those fronts, which I'll talk about further later. I think and how we want to diversify their network. Like a lot of people did lean towards click and collect last year, but this year we're looking at express services, on-demand delivery is an option as well. I think multi-carrier shipping strategy could add value to that on top of that, just to start tackling these things pre-peak. Yeah.
And Fee, what about from your perspective? No, I sit there and listen to multi-carrier and I cringe. I'll be really honest. It's okay. I support it. No, I think one thing we've talked about we've touched into, we talk about customer experience, we talk about communication. What we actually have to do as a collective is do it together. I think we've got to partner to success. I heard you say communicate more often. No, communicate when we need to and when it actually adds value to the process and help each other. And so communication is not just with the person who bought the product. You're right. Share with the carriers what you're actually anticipating. I know we talk about maybe trucks turning up and not being enough capacity. That's because there's no visibility for that part of the process. Not blaming. If you are having problems with stock coming in, there's a really important point about managing expectations in cart. If someone's buying it, let them know that the stock's not available and you may not be able to ship it. Or if there are generally delays across a network for some reason, controllable or uncontrollable, because we've had a number of events such as bushfires and floods that do impact as well. Share that information with the buyer at the time and kind of manage their expectations. I think that's really important. And this group's heard me talk about an integrated customer experience. We're all in this end-to-end journey together. And I think that's where we should be really investing our time, is how do we leverage each other to make sure that the whole process is a really good experience and that we communicate as we need to.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Anita, as well? I think, yeah, just given the challenges, where would you see, I guess, that next part?
I totally agree with Fee and Harps. I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't think about this before this, but thinking about this question now, just when we have things like a sale going on, not just communicating with the customer that, hey, there's a sale, but I have made the mistake of not even telling my staff that I'm doing a sale. And so customer service is overwhelmed. The warehouse needs to be informed that there is going to be a sale and there's going to be maybe not 200 orders that day, maybe there's going to be 500 orders that day. And they need to know as well. And then we need to talk to people like Australia Post and our account representatives from there. We need to talk to Shippit. We just need to make sure that everyone is on board when there is a peak. I think that is so incredibly important. And I actually didn't think about it until this moment. But I would say another thing that you would need to invest in, rather than just hiring staff all the time just to make up for all those extra sales, I would say that you need to upskill your staff and make sure that everyone is all hands on deck and understand that it is in peak season. It is a crazy time. And so everyone needs to be willing to kind of jump in, be flexible. And the word agile is thrown around, but they really do. You need to talk to your representatives and make sure that you're on top of all the delays, make sure the customer knows about it, and then also communicate with warehouse and all your carriers as well.
And yeah, to that point, leading into this, I think it is so important to invest in your staff and ensure that they're ready for peak season, that they align with your goals and your vision for a success, because it truly is a team effort. And I guess,
but on that point of investment, it's also about being aware, because it's not a sustainable position to have teams working really, really hard. We do put all hands in. We absolutely understand the importance, but the well-being of everybody in the process is really, really important. You're right. Support teams get inundated because it's such a critical time for people receiving those gifts or presents. So be aware of that too, and be supportive of each other. It's really, really important.
Most definitely. And I think linking into that, it's that next piece of how do you, I guess, ramp up your teams and ensure that they are ready, are coming into peak, and alongside operations as well. Anita, I guess, kind of coming into that, what are your thoughts around that piece?
Yeah, I'll start this one off. So I think that one is, if we're going to go really nitty gritty stuff, it's upskilling your team. That's the first thing. So that goes from customer service all the way to pickers and packers and carriers. So we're talking about customer service having more automated things going on. So canned responses, looking at last year's questions, all the frequently asked questions, and making note of them, writing down answers for customer service so their job becomes easier. And I think that having everyone integrated, making sure that warehouse is communicating with head office and so on and so forth, this is like critical at these times because people are operating so differently. I would say also, when you add more staff, you're also prone to, say, more errors as well, because there's so many orders that are coming through, and it's human beings at the end of the day who are working so hard to try and get these out the door, but there is errors. So I would say that what you need to do is invest in quality checking systems and making sure that what people order is what they're getting. That is the basic need of online shopping. Of course, outside of peak season, they want more. They want the Tim Tams. They want the really fast deliveries, all that. They understand that things could be slower, but when they order something and they get it delivered, it needs to be what they ordered. And so I would say that when you're ramping up and when you talk about ramping up operations, it's just the quality checks, accuracy, and making sure that all your staff are on board with what you're doing.
Love that. And what about from your perspective, Harps?
I think just to tack on to that, there's also bits and pieces you can do to help your teams on the floor. Putting stock in the right areas, getting closer to your customers, looking at a ship from store model if it's an option, and also the right carrier services for the right lanes and the right kind of freight you have. Looking at those kind of bits and pieces where you can actually optimize those kind of lanes just to make sure you've got right freight going via the right carrier through the right lanes, so that you know that it's actually freight that the carrier wants to manage and can manage. So there's a lot of bits which you can then, pre-do before, hiring more people as well, which then, if you look at that partnership, it just helps at the end of the day for peak, because you've done all the different steps you can do to optimize and ramp for it.
Yeah. Anita, any insights on how to tackle sustainability this year with all of that in mind?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that people can do. Obviously, I'll start with packaging, but packaging is the easiest switch that you can make. And so I would say start with packaging. Another thing that retailers can think about is actually doing something called micro-fulfilling. So that might be using third-party warehouses in metro cities so that dispatch is fast and shipping is really quick. You could set up your own mini warehouses as well and have key stock items in metro cities and ship out there. It just lowers your carbon footprint, but also it helps customers to feel really happy about the fact that their purchase is coming really quickly. So I would say there are two things, and I don't think people need to get overwhelmed with stuff. There are things that you can add to your website. We use something called EcoCart, which basically neutralizes an order. You can use Australia Post, which is carbon neutral delivery, which is awesome. It really helps. So using companies that align with your values as well really helps. But I would say start with packaging.
Love that. And what about Fee? How are you guys tackling that?
And interesting, can I just add to the packaging? And I know Shippit knows this is one of my passion points. Think about your digital carbon footprint. So we talked about communications. Every time we send a communication, we contribute to carbon footprint. So I think that's another reason just to be very conscious about your business processes and what you're doing. Australia Post, we do a lot in relation to ramping up for this year. Importantly, we're in planning. We're well and truly in planning, even though it feels like peak all the time at the moment. Part of what we've actually done is said, how do we make this sustainable? You can't keep doing what we've done in the past. We look to see what the trends are. We look to see what the buying behaviours are. So we're working in with the teams. We're bringing in more vehicles and vans. We're looking at how we can use our data better. How can we even use the data from partners such as Qantas and any flight impacts that may be happening that we can feed into our network and ultimately to our customers to let them understand where there could be potential impacts to service. So there's a number of spots that we look and ramp up. But you're right about upskilling, and we do bring new team members in. It's one of the things we need to do in order to make sure that we do deliver for the peak season.
Fiona, we have a question for you from Ryan.
Oh, yay! I don't know where the path is. I don't.
Yeah, that's actually what he said.
Yeah.
How have customer expectations changed since the rise in online ordering from a carrier perspective?
The expectations? It's interesting. I think they're just becoming more prevalent. And let's be honest, I think that there's visibility and choice is really, really important. Convenience is really important. You're right. Knowing when something is, if I've asked, and it feeds into questions we were talking about. they want to know reliability, confidence that I'm going to get it, give me some options, let me be in charge of my delivery. I think that's a really important piece. There's a lack of tolerance for a commitment that's not met, I think, but that's part of being part of a digital era. And so as we move more and more online, we need to be providing information to make sure that they feel that level of satisfaction and control. You do see a rise. You've seen a change through the pandemic with some of the kind of faster services. We know that there's emerging need for some bits and pieces. Let's talk about it. Hyperlocal is part of what we're talking about. But that's not taking away from the bulk of, ultimately people want it when they want it. And so they're becoming more demanding in that respect, I think.
Yeah, absolutely what we're seeing. And yeah, previous to what we were saying before, I love all the responses. You know, it's a strong mix of team enablement, sustainability, and open lines of communication. So education is really important as well. But moving on to talk about delivery and what makes for a really good delivery experience. Anita, I guess in your opinion, what communication strategies can retailers use to increase transparency with their customers?
I say there is one main thing that retailers need to do, and that is to be consistent on all channels. So when you think about communication, and I am guilty of this, I think a lot of brands are guilty of this, is they'll email customers and say, hey guys, we're doing, you know, this sale coming up and it's really exciting, or there are delays with this carrier, or, you know, don't expect your order today, expect it in 7 days. But what they'll do is they'll only email, and not everyone is opening their email. If you're consistent with your communication strategy and you put it also on your social media channels, you also put it on your website, you put it on order confirmations, and you do a post-purchase email, everything needs to be consistent at that time so that your staff know what's going on, your communications are all equal, everyone knows what's going on, and customers can't come back to you and say, hey, I didn't know about it. And that's the worst thing, because you've said, oh, but I sent an email. That's not fair on them either, because they're not always going to get it, they're not always going to open it. So I would say the main thing is, even when we're talking about delivery, I want to really talk about communication. And what Fee said was right. You don't email them just willy-nilly at that time, but strategically. But if you do say something, you have to be consistent across all channels. Really think about where they are and what they're doing. That means that, you know, if you're putting it on Instagram, put it on LinkedIn too, put it on your emails, put it on your website. This is like a crucial thing at peak season.
And Fee, from a carrier lens, what does AusPost recommend?
And there's a couple of things too. You know that a good delivery is, I got what I wanted when I wanted, you know, and I didn't need to follow up. That's so when you start to follow up, you start to see an NPS drop. People just get disappointed, whether they're following up on there wasn't something in the parcel, or the parcel in itself didn't arrive when you said it was going to arrive. But what we're actually seeing increasingly is allowing people to, as I said earlier, to be in control and have some choice. If I know I'm not going to be home, give me the option to actually leave it in a safe spot. If I actually have adjustment needs, such as accessibility, give me the options to actually let you know that I have those needs, so that you don't put my parcel in a high parcel locker when I'm actually in a wheelchair. Really personal items that just make people realize that you understand their needs, whether it be when I need it or how I need it, is really, really important to get a really positive NPS on your delivery, like a performance score. Yeah.
And Fee, I have a couple of questions for you coming through. So we have Jackie asking, as I use Australia Post as my main carrier, are you moving towards, well done. Nice, Jackie. Are you moving towards more tracking events similar to other carriers, such as DHL? I think people like to know where their parcels are at all points of the process.
So we should have a number of tracking events, right? So you talk about more. I'm going to lean back into more doesn't necessarily mean better. I'm not. But and I know if you're talking about DHL, you may be actually talking about incoming from overseas as well. So definitely an improvement on what we're doing and the number of events. I think really importantly, we are actually doing some work at the moment. Absolutely, there's a program of work about how do we not necessarily give more, but give more meaningful and give tracking events at the right point in time. Yes, there's frustration if you're getting events, but it doesn't seem to be moving, or you think it's moving the wrong way through the network. You may not realize it's actually might be moving through a more sustainable and efficient way through our network. that's not always clear. So we're absolutely looking at how we reimagine and redefine. We're also looking at a program of work of in how we're uplifting our event management and how that can then be provided back into our customers, and they can choose the services and the tracking events that are relevant to their process. So there are definitely big programs of work in that, because tracking is so important.
That's awesome to hear. And we have another question from Chantel. Fee, you mentioned just now about giving customers more control over their delivery, which is a great idea and one we all agree on. However, previously mentioned that you were opposed to multi-carrier shipping.
I didn't say I was opposed. I said we just don't love hearing that the course is out there. No, we're not opposed. I actually think you should do what you do best. Sorry, I'll let you ask the question. But yes.
No. And it was more of a statement of, wouldn't having multi-carrier options give customers the sense of delivery control?
I think there's a couple of answers. There's a couple of points to answer. I believe that you do what you do best. There are some things that we may not necessarily do well. There's things that we don't actually do, and some customers need that. Australia Post don't move mattresses. It's not part of our business. So we know that there are carriers out there that actually do that. I'll take an extreme because it makes it easier. I understand that there might also be certain, even same day, some of the immediate services that we may not necessarily do as well. Right? It's not part of what we currently do. But I understand that there'll be choices and people want to do that. I think the other point is the challenge to Australia Post is do what we do and do it really, really well, be reliable, be consistent. We will be, and it is our aspiration to be our customers' first choice, number one choice in e-commerce delivery. Like, that is our aspiration. So it's up to us to make sure the service is as reliable and consistent and predictable as you need it to be. But we do expect people to have other carriers. We're not so egotistical that we think we're the only carrier and the best. We know that there are other carriers out there doing other things.
And I guess I'll throw to you, Hearts. We've got another question. Warren has come through and asked, as a supplier using multiple carriers, experience of the carrier does not perform to, and when the experience of the carrier does not perform to the expectation, what's the best approach to communicate this to our customers?
I think at the end of the day, it depends. If you're using Shippit at this point, we do have the overview of where the carrier performance is. Over communication, like we mentioned earlier, was a key thing. But during peak, there's also options of putting it a banner on your website, letting people know that, hey, there's actually extra delays happening because it's, Christmas, there's other bits and pieces. You could actually put that through the buying experience when they do those orders through to us as well. I think that could be another way to tackle this. But carrier delays, like there's a lot that's happened over the last few years. There were the floods, there's other bits and pieces. I think just being open with them when there is a delay will actually be much better rather than not telling that, because at the end of the day, it does impact their experience. I think one thing we've tacked on top of this is we've worked on real-time ETAs so that if things do change in the journey, we can actually update the the customer at the end when a delay is happening. So we're working towards that as well. So it's not only on you to let your customers know, the software could do it too. So we've actually tried to evolve it that way. And I think it's in line with what AusPost has been doing as well. So making sure that there's over communication, but the right communication happening when there is a delay so that we can improve the customer journey here as well.
You talked about EDDs dates. Yes, you're right. We do that work. And we're also giving a 2-hour window when certain things are being delivered. And that allows people choice if they don't think they're going to be home to say, it's okay, you can leave it, or yes, redirect it. It's giving those in-flight options to customers as well with more granular level of detail about the delivery. Yeah.
And I'll just add on here that AusPost and Shippit both are quite on top of when there are delays, right? They're the first groups of people who know about delays. They usually have a page on their site which will update all the time about delays. If you are unsure as a brand as to what delays are, you can always link from your website to their pages, to AusPost's, updates. I think that's a really important thing too. So customers are aware that you're not just talking out of your bum, you're actually listening to AusPost and Shippit, directly from the source.
Gosh, the questions are now flying through. So this is a good thing. We're generating conversation. I want to flag a little bit about lost parcels, Fee, and this one's maybe for you, just in terms of, I'm going to throw you some curly ones, and you knew that, I think you said hit me with them. But
I said it would happen. I know.
And I think it's good to address it, right? So in terms of what's AusPost's stand on that in terms of lost parcels and the small business owners having to potentially pay to send out more stock, or what's your thoughts on that, and potentially how to handle that when having conversations with their customers?
Well, I think, and I'm not going to generalize. You're right. I understand that there could be delays that exceed what we actually have as estimated times of delivery, etc., and by definition might be deemed lost. There are processes. I did see, because I quickly looked at the questions that talk about being out of pocket. I think that's never our intent, just to be honest. I think that's important to make sure that you are connecting in with Australia Post. We do have support process. I don't have the details, but what our commitment to is actually in the frequently asked questions is probably provide an overview, because I definitely don't like hearing small businesses talking about being out of pocket for some of those things, about how you potentially claim certain refunds on bits and pieces, and also the insurance that we may have on some of the products, depending on how it may have been shipped. But definitely not our intent to make people out of pocket. Yes, things can go. We will never say that we don't lose some parcels. That can actually happen, but there are some processes. And as I said, it's not my expertise, so I will actually provide the information though. Yeah.
And just to everyone sending through questions, just know that we are reading them, and we're going to definitely come back to everyone in the FAQs, and if we don't get time today. So I do just want to move on to another piece as well that is all around customer experience and retention, because that is seemingly what kind of keeps coming up. And at the end of the day, we all exist to deliver a great experience to our merchants so they can deliver an epic experience to their customers. So, Anita, in your opinion, why is customer experience in the last mile delivery so important for everyone here?
Because I would argue that last mile delivery is sometimes more important than the product itself. If you consider why customers are shopping online for certain things, if they're just browsing, that's a different story. But if they're doing gifting, last minute gifting, if they're going to an event and they need a last minute dress or an outfit, what they're looking for are retailers who can offer that same day or next day delivery. So sometimes I'll specifically shop at, say, a store like The Iconic or Shopify, just knowing that while maybe the dresses aren't the exact dresses that I want, I know that I can get them tonight. And so that last mile delivery is so important, because what ends up happening is people have a choice of going into store or getting a retailer that ships quickly. So if you can focus on that and really, I mean, of course, there's communication and all of that stuff, but if you can deliver really quickly, I mean, this is such an important part of the whole process. In fact, I think that brands are now focusing more on last mile than they are the new product development itself. And I think it's a really important thing just for that instant gratification for customers.
I love that. And Fee, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think thinking about this question, for us, it's a really simple one. Your last experience will dictate your next choice. And that's why people are investing in it. If you get a really great experience, if you feel that you've arrived, etc. So that's the investment you talked about, and why customers are actually investing in it is because that's that last impression you've got of the brand. And if it's a good one, you'll go back and you'll be either buying from that particular e-commerce retailer, or you'll be wanting that carrier because it's actually been a really fantastic experience. And it dictates the next order. Really
Absolutely. Can I just add, Ash, to this? I think that what Fee said is 100% spot on. I had an experience myself. I shopped from a department store in Australia, and I bought some shapewear, and what I got was an oversized box. The shapewear was about this big. The box inside, it was just it was damaged. The shapewear itself was fine, but the box it came in was all. And I know for a fact that I will buy that shapewear, even though it takes me 2 months to come from overseas. I'll buy it from the direct source rather than going from the Australian retailer. I had such a bad experience. There was plastic inside. I didn't have a good time with that. Even though it came really quickly, it really wasn't about the time of delivery. It was just, I needed something that I felt good about. And then what ends up happening is when there's plastic, when there's a big box for such a small item, the burden is placed on customers to get rid of it. It's actually, the brands just can leave it and go. So that last mile is so important, not just with the shipping stuff. And we have to always move away from Post delays, okay? Because that's actually not the whole thing, but it's actually the packaging as well. The experience is more than just shipping. Last mile delivery is also about how it comes and the experience around that packaging too.
But just on that point about delays, because but we know that we're part of your business. So we know, and our posties are really proud to be part of your business. So when they deliver that, that's why we're very much our frontline is always thinking about how we may optimize the customer experience, because we're an extension of your brand. That's really important. Yeah.
I love that. And Harps, do you have anything to add here?
I think just from what we've all spoken about, that it's clear communication, making sure that delays and everything have been communicated. At the end of the day, if their customers are happy, our merchants are going to be happy. I think that's the gist of it. That's why customer experience is so important for last mile delivery, like the repeat business and everything comes into it. I mentioned this earlier, but it's also the whole delivery experience. So going into peak, putting some banners up on the delays that could be happening. We've also seen a trend over the last 2 years where sales periods or sales have been brought earlier than the usual Black Friday to make sure delays don't happen. So looking at those kind of ways where, you could actually get the goods to the customers at the end, but with different plans rather than just waiting until the last time to get it there pre-Christmas. I think it's also the customer's point of view as well, if you want to take that, where if the customer is really clear on like, hey, leave the box at this area, or, I won't be home at this time, like all of that is part of the delivery experience. If you think about it, there's different aspects to it as well. I think it's just to make sure all that information flows through at the last mile delivery, and then it just makes it as smooth as possible. I think that all will then, package up, pre-peak planning and customer experience at the end for last mile. That's a whole part of this whole thing which we need to look at.
Ash has disappeared.
Yes.
We also know that last mile can be the first mile of a delivery because of returns.
Exactly.
So it's really important that what you're receiving, you talk about that packaging then, because it's not always what you want. You get it, it's not what you want. We try to minimize that, because I'm with you, Nita, about sustainable. Fast fashion's not necessarily what we want, but how do you then make that an easy process? How do you help and continue that experience for the return of that parcel as well, that product as well, is equally important.
I think I might ask a question that Ash would ask from the chat box, which I think is really important, and that was, when do you start to communicate about those cutoff dates? I think this is a really good nitty-gritty question for everyone, because you need to do it very soon, because what you can do is have an FAQs page. It doesn't need to be an announcement. You don't need to go and announce this to everybody, but what you can do is have it on your website as an FAQs, because that's what people type into the search bar. When is cutoff date for shipping? So you can have that. It comes up in your FAQs. It's in your top banner. I think you can do it at any point throughout the year. But when it comes close to that time, then you can start making announcements about it as well through emails.
And on that point, we will, and they've not yet been calculated, and we're working through as a carrier. Australia Post does issue the best shipment dates in order to guarantee delivery dates. Those will be communicated. And just like last year, and we've done it, we will do a lot of communication about that, and we will be pushing that out too, so that your customers will hear directly from us what our recommendations are. So it comes from you, but it also will come from us, just as it did last year. Yeah.
Awesome. Now we have a few questions coming through, so I want to kind of fire some of these. And again, if we don't get to yours today, please know that we'll definitely come back to you. But I want to touch on same-day delivery, and is this offered by Australia Post, and how much more these days is same-day delivery rates versus not, and what your recommendations are?
Are you asking me about rates? We're going to take rates offline, and so we can. There's absolutely, we have a same day. We have a same day service. You may have heard about a company called Star Trek Courier, that is part of the Australia Post Group, and absolutely we have a same day service available. We even have within that group a product called On Demand, which is 3-hour windows. So there's definitely opportunities for same day services. Again, let me take offline and let individuals contact us in relation to rates, because it's not it's not my data. I'm not pricing and rates either, but we can definitely give you that kind of information.
Awesome. We have just a general shout out here. We've got Anita, we love your mailers. We have been using them for all our orders since we started our business. Paris, you have to let us know what your business is. And they're great. And we're actually using them right now to pack orders.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. Thank you. I love hearing that.
Yeah. Question for you, Harbs. Any tips on customer retention post-festive period, especially if a business is too small to participate in Boxing Day sales?
So, timely question. We're actually doing a pre-peak ebook slash, how to, top 5 steps on how to get ready for peak, and, all these suggestions. We'll be sending that out in the next coming weeks, which will help address all these questions. But there's a lot of ways you can look at this. So we'll address all of that there, and if you have follow-on questions, we can definitely address them.
Can I answer this a little bit as well? So if you're too small to do Boxing Day sales, I would say don't do them and don't feel the pressure to do those sorts of sales. I mean, sales are when you want to get rid of excess stock, and sometimes people just want to have that influx of revenue coming in, but you don't need to do sales to have customer retention. In fact, I would argue the opposite. And then you don't have people expecting sales all the time. If you're too small, it's always just about being present all the time. So don't stop just because sales are lower after peak season. Don't stop communicating, and don't stop posting content, and don't stop talking about what you're good at and how you make things and behind the scenes. Just keep up that content, be really consistent with it, and just foster that community. And it really is not about having sales.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good, because it seems that is what everyone defaults to. So that's a really good thought and strategy as well. Harps, I'm going to ask another question of you. Can you give me an example of the comms that we should communicate to our customers?
Sure. If you're talking about the banners, which I mentioned earlier, you could have them highlighted at the top and just talk about delivery delays could be happening. If you're talking about comms, we already have them in Shippit. So it's something you could actually just, leverage our tracking experiences with the real-time ETAs there. You can personalize some of those comms which are going up from the Shippit website as well, and add your branding to it and so on and so forth. But I think that the idea here is use a software like Shippit to make sure comms are going out. As I think Anita mentioned earlier, with the consistency it does, and the real-time ETAs on top of that. But then on the website, making sure that at checkout there's information there to go through via peak, so that making sure all of that's upfront and front of mind for everyone.
So once you've notified to, and it sounds brand promotion, but the Australia Post app, the My Post app for your receivers, your customers will actually often have that, and quite a number of Australians use that app. In there will allow them to get those updates as well. And to your point earlier, to allow for that in-flight change, if they actually want to we call it safe drop, to leave it in a safe space, or if they for some reason would like to redirect it. So your customers have that, and they have that as part of your process. This is your freight service, but they get that service as part of an extension of that.
I always wonder, when I get it, because I get those texts on the regular at the minute, it seems, it goes, should you leave at the front door? I always wonder who says no, because I'm like, yes, just pile up my parcels.
And it is and by the way, it's a two-way choice. If you don't want to provide that to your customers because you think your products, you talked earlier about loss, if there's a loss at the door, and you don't want to take that, you don't have to allow that option. It actually is, as a sender, you have that choice. Then you allow the receiver to decide whether or not they'd like to do that. And I think it's based on how safe do they feel that it really will be, more importantly, how vulnerable, and more importantly, they may not want someone to know that they've ordered something. It could be a gift for Christmas, and they actually don't want someone to see that something's come from X company. So there's a number of reasons why you might say no, particularly in peak.
And I think there's a question that's come through from Leanne, and I'm happy for anyone to kind of answer this. During peak periods, some tracking events get skipped, and it makes it nearly impossible for customers and merchants to know where a parcel is. What solutions are in place for this issue?
Can I answer one saying we're trying not to do that? We're looking to see how we can better do that. If you want to know, sometimes it's not through lack of process, it's actually through speed, and particularly in the previous couple of years, I'll give you that's particularly why you may have seen it's just the need to get the parcel through. we're looking how we can better do what we call aggregated scans and things like that. So where we know something might have gone onto a truck, and so that we can at least scan once and then apply it to all the parcels. So we're definitely paying attention to where it's really, really important to make sure that the right amount of information is being pushed for. It's through, it's not, from our perspective, it's not intentional. Yeah.
What about 100%? Sorry, just to add on, 100% agree here. Like from an AusPost perspective, but we've got the multiple carriers on our platform which also go through the same issue. So it's something we work with them to see as well, to see how we can make sure all the tracking events are coming through, putting monitoring in place when it's not, like just to see how we can just work with them to iron out these bits pre-peak.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think as well, like there's lots of questions, and again coming through, which we'll answer afterwards, but around AusPost and using, say, Hero Packaging versus the AusPost packaging, and trying to navigate the best postage price, but also having sustainability front of mind. Should you be using a combination of both? I guess both, maybe Fee and Anita, you can answer this question from your perspectives. Maybe Fee, if you want to go first.
I can do that. I'm not going to dictate packaging. One of the key things for us is to ensure that the packaging is what we call network compliant. In other words, make sure that it's really, that it actually stays on the network. So we've definitely got a very strong focus on sustainability. Just generally, we talk about building a sustainable business. That is core to what we're doing and how we can do better packaging. Hero would know that. That's part of what we do, and that means that we are taking that into consideration. So I'm not going to say that we're saying that there was a question in there, and I think we'll pick this up about how people are saying it's more expensive. The intent is to make it a better experience, so I will pick that up. Yeah, sustainability, really, really important for us. We're looking to see how we can improve our packaging, both for sending and returns. How can that be applied, and make sure that it's also network compliant? A big piece of what we're doing.
So what I hear is from my post business customers specifically, this is where the issue is, right? But it can be fixed. You have to, what was happening before is that the machinery that AusPost had wasn't measuring it properly. So now it is. So if you are accurately putting in your measurements, the weight, you won't be charged extra for using your BYO packaging, okay? You just need to make sure that everything that you do is exactly as you say it is. And this is a really important thing, because even we were confused about this at the beginning of the year. I think that they are working on it, and we have had talks with them. So, you know, everything is happening in the background, and they're doing what they can. And we're also trying to create packaging that can go through and doesn't cost anyone anymore. But we are mainly focused not on the service side of things, the shipping side of things, but just the packaging itself. So it's just about how we as Hero Packaging and other sustainable companies in packaging can communicate with AusPost and other carriers to get a pricing strategy that is even. And we are all working on it. It's not that we're not thinking about it, but it's just, if you are using My Post Business, this is where the issues are. And if you do have questions, you can always email me or Fee as well. And I'm sure that we can sort of,
and that's a really good call out, and my apologies, that's exactly right. So use your example earlier, Anita, based on the big box and the small parcel. It's dimension and weight scanning is what it's called, DWS, if you've heard it. You're right, that box is big and it goes on the capacity. So that in itself is defining a particular price range. So we want to encourage the right use of packaging so that it moves effectively through the network, irrespective of where it is. And that if you do go big and that excessive size, not necessarily the weight, that in itself will impact pricing. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
I have a question here that is, how can I apply for account manager? It's very, very practical. For AusPost and Shippit, I'm a brand new brand about to launch, and I need some help with the correct setup and channels. So what are you saying? How do we go about this if I'm someone wanting to start my business? Harps, I'm going to throw to you first.
Sure, definitely. Send us your details. We'll get things rolling and get you started. I think that's the gist of it. But no, happy to have a chat, and we'll get the right channels talking to you, and we'll get the ball rolling.
And exactly that. Let's work together on that piece. It's a really important feedback. We often listen, we do all the time, are listening to our customers, and we know when you're starting out is actually where you need that guidance. So I work very closely with Nick Antonopoulos, who looks after the small business segment. So let's get you in contact with the right people, because you don't know what you don't know. It's probably why some of you are actually sitting here on this webinar. And we know this is when, and this is what we talk about, supporting each other. This is when we come together and actually support each other to grow. And so absolutely. We'll be there and we'll help guide you through how to best optimize our services, but in together with our partners in Shippit. Absolutely.
It's so true, isn't it? That's why we're all sitting on this webinar together, because we are all, together as one, and we love to work together as one cohesive group. So I think that's really important. Yeah. I've got another question come through, and then I think this will have to be our last one. Otherwise, we'll sit here all day, ladies. I'm going to ask this one of you, Anita. Is it true that biodegradable plastic is getting banned in Australia? And if so, is this affecting the sustainable approach? Is recycling packaging a better option?
That's a great question. So when you talk about biodegradable can mean plastic. So it's really important that people can differentiate between biodegradable and home compostable. When you are talking about any kind of plastics, then anything greater than a certain thickness, I believe it's 25 micron, that is okay. Anything under that for things like shopping bags is actually being banned. What we do is we have certified home compostable, which is not banned and it won't be banned. What we're moving to with Anne's Plastics Pact is that by 2025, everything is either reusable, recyclable, or home compostable. And the government is on board with this, and that's kind of where it is. But biodegradable as a term is such a horrible term because it can refer to home compostable or it can refer to single-use plastic as well. So biodegradable, I think, yes, a lot of those single-use plastic items are being banned, but not our packaging.
Wonderful. Good news. Okay. Well, I think that's going to wrap up our questions just for now, and just rest assured we will absolutely come back to everyone. But I would like to give the audience one last little key takeaway. So from all of you, on a personal note, besides the booze, what gets everyone through peak season? Harps?
I think for me, over the last few years, it's having a great team around you. I think people who are willing to roll up their sleeves, get things done, and don't mind staying up late just if you need to make sure to get things going. I think the team component of it is the crucial part for me. That's what gets us through peak every year.
Love that. Anita, for you?
Same. I love my staff. I think they are just incredible. And I think that every business thinks the same thing. We have a small team, but they're just phenomenal. They're just willing to get in there and do everything. And they support me and my partner so much in the business. So I rely heavily on them. And then also, obviously, those customers that randomly email and say like, hey, love what you're doing. That always helps as well.
Yeah, love that. And Fee, from your perspective?
So it's going to be a theme around team. And I think, Anita, what you point out is a small team. I think being part of a very big team, and it's the same sensation of coming together. But personally, there is something quite exciting and grounding in being part of the peak and festive season for all the Australians. I think that's, if you stop and think about kind of what you're part of and the joy that you're bringing to Australians, and being part of that is personally very satisfying. It's what inspires.
That's a great response. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, ladies. Well, thank you so much to everyone for attending. It has been an awesome session with so many key takeaways and tips and tricks. Gosh, so many
tips. On the booze. Is that why you were answering that question?
That's the booze.
To help you ship and deliver more this peak season without breaking the bank. If you want to get in early and maximize your holiday sales, please scan the QR code on the screen so you can learn how to start applying these tips right away. Shopify, just from our perspective, is also launching a peak season playbook this week. So please do look out for a copy in your inbox after this event. It's jam-packed with tips and tricks for preparing your tech stack and marketing mix in the lead up to the peak season. As always, we'd also love your feedback on this session. So please do take 1 minute after the webinar to fill out the survey. That will be sent to your email. It will help us improve our content for next time, and it's your chance to tell us what kind of topics you'd like to hear more about. So thank you again. Thank you so much for your time, ladies, and thank you so much to everyone watching. We hope you have a beautiful afternoon and happy shipping and peak season.
Yeah. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you, everyone.